Hi, my name's Kelly Caperton. I'm one of the physicians here at Caperton Fertility Institute. I wanted to talk to you today in general about IVF and what it is. IVF stands for in vitro fertilization. In what that actually means is we're taking the eggs and taking sperm and having them create an embryo outside of the human body. Once that embryo is created, then we put it into the uterus. And so fertilization is happening outside the human body, and that's why it's called in vitro fertilization as opposed to in vivo fertilization, which is in the body itself. So who needs IVF? Well, in general, IVF's not for everybody, but there's certain scenarios where we might recommend jumping straight to IVF. One of those would be if your fertility journey is starting a little later in life, particularly around the age of 40. We might recommend IVF from the start as opposed to doing lower technology ways to achieve pregnancy. Any couples that have sperm issues where the count is low, IVF might be indicated. Anybody with endometriosis and that can result in lower egg count and quality, IVF might be indicated at that point. Anyone that has a genetic condition that they want the embryo tested for to make sure that they're not passing it on to their children, we can do that through IVF. And anybody that has tubal blockage, IVF might be indicated in those instances. So what is it, or what is the process? Well, the process in general, let me back up and just talk about what's naturally happening in your body every month if you're having a regular period. So starting right at the beginning of your cycle, your eggs are at rest in your ovary, and then your brain will send a signal. One of those eggs will hear the call to duty and decide it's going to develop. It grows into what we call a follicle. It looks like a little water blister on the ovary. In that follicle, there will be a mature egg. It grows to almost 2 centimeters, and then it pops, releases the actual egg, which is then floating around inside your body, and then it's the fallopian tube's job to be able to pick up the egg. The egg travels into the fallopian tube. If you were doing ovulation kits at home, that's when your ovulation kit would start to turn positive about a day before ovulation occurred. If you were also doing the kits and you were exposed to sperm at the proper time, then the sperm would have the job of finding that egg in the fallopian tube. The egg and sperm meet in the fallopian tube, and that's where fertilization is actually occurring in the body. So during the natural process, you're only releasing one egg every month typically. Usually one egg ovulates. One egg will develop into a follicle and ovulate that month. What we're doing with IVF is whatever your body decides is ready that month and getting into the starting block and available, we try to stimulate all those eggs at one time. So all the eggs to develop into follicles that contain hopefully a mature egg inside. We do that through a series of little injections with tiny little needles. Most of the time, those injections, on average, people are taking the medications to stimulate their ovaries for approximately 8 or 9 days on average. We see you in the office every couple of days and follow along with ultrasound. So what we'll be doing is measuring the follicles and make sure that they're growing appropriately, not too fast, not too slow, adjusting your medications as needed. That's an individualized thing that we do to determine how much medication that you need. Once those leading follicles are approximately about the size they are during a natural ovulatory cycle, somewhere around 18 millimeters to 2 centimeters, then we know your body is ready. Each of those follicles will hopefully have a mature egg inside. We have you go home and do what's called a trigger shot, which is mimicking your body's natural LH surge. So what that's doing is telling all the eggs within those follicles to mature up and get ready to ovulate. Your egg retrieval is done 36 hours after that trigger injection. Done here in the office. We have an anesthesia person that comes the morning of that procedure. She will start a little IV. You take a quick little nap with some medication. In approximately 10 minutes, you're done. All the fluid from the follicles on your ovary are aspirated with a special little vacuum. And that is given to the embryologist, and then she would sort through the fluid, find the mature eggs. All the mature eggs on the first day would be then fertilized with sperm from either your partner or another sperm source or a donor source. And and then she will follow those eggs in the laboratory till they're about 5 or 6 days along. Around that time, she'll be able to see what's actually going to be the baby and what's going to be the placenta. And we usually take some cells off the placental area and send that for outside testing. And what that's doing is letting us know which of the embryos are genetically normal. They have all of their chromosomes and they should result in a normal pregnancy. Which ones are abnormal, boys or girls, if that's a concern at that time. We'll have all that information back in approximately 10 to 14 days, so we'll know which embryos are available to go on to the next step, which would be embryo transfer. The results and success rate of IVF really varies from person to person, but the biggest things that factor into it are the person's age and their overall ovarian reserve or ovarian quality. We usually check ovarian quality by looking at the ovaries on ultrasound and making sure that we see lots of eggs at rest. Another way is doing some hormonal testing, usually around the time of your period. One of those hormones that we look at in particular is called anti-Mullerian hormone, or AMH. AMH is secreted by little support cells that surround eggs at rest in your ovaries. So the higher that number, the better. You should have a greater success rate with IVF the higher that AMH is. But that's really depends, and it depends on several factors, as I mentioned, the eggs and the AMH, but also any health conditions, overall health standpoint. So it varies from person to person, and it's really a good idea to sit down and have a conversation about some realistic expectations of whether IVF is the right thing for you and whether it makes sense to go ahead and go on this journey with us.